All right, it is Thursday. Gosh, what year is it? January 4th, 2024. Gosh, that was rough. Sorry about that. 2024. And folks, you're watching the which we are going to be able to do things a little bit differently than I've done them before. Um, Sorry, checking to make sure everything looks good. Everything looks good on the Instagram front. All right. So yeah, if you're joining for the first time, this is the MMA Eco Live podcast, product of yours truly and MMA ecosystem, where I cover all things Asian MMA. Every week on the podcast, I usually run down the Asian MMA schedule. However, there is no schedule this weekend. We have about probably the only week off of the whole year where there's literally not a thing on the horizon. Kind of nice to have one out of 52 weeks a year. Allows us to be able to talk about some other things. So, yeah, appreciate you joining. My name is Chris. I am the host of this podcast. And man, where to start? I do want to hit on some Asian MMA news. And before I get into that, anyone on Instagram that is watching, really thankful that you could join today. I will say that comments will only go through on the YouTube stream. So any questions that you have, you'll have to hop on that is in my story, the link for the live stream. Also, the stream will cut off after an hour. So in that case, again, the stream is your place to go. But for now, let's get into things. Some Asian MMA news. Going to run down a few things you probably heard about. Azat Maksum now fighting Charles Johnson on May 3rd instead of Nate Maness. Maness is out with an injury. You probably saw, follow me on social media, you've heard these things. Tong Kai fighting Tong Wei for the featherweight title unification at 166, March 1st in Qatar. You also saw Wu Yanan is making her MMA return after a long time away. A long time, I believe her last fight was actually UFC 278, August of last year. Jeez, I'm that guy. Last year, 2022 was her last appearance. She will be fighting massive Chinese prospect Wang Song for Kunlun, and Kunlun is going to Bangkok. So first time out of the country for them in a while. I know they used to do shows out of the country with that, but going to Thailand. So that's kind of cool. Interesting to do this fight on that turf. I guess Wu Yanan actually trains in Thailand at Sunken Fight. So almost kind of a home game for her. Wang Song trains out of UFC PI in Shanghai. What else? There was the WLF partnership with Black Combat announced last week. Well, they've also announced that they are partnering with Pride in Indonesia. They're partnering with Shudo in Japan. They are partnering with Lion Championship in Vietnam, and it also said the Hong Kong MMA Association. So I don't really know what that's like. I haven't seen too many MMA events going on in Hong Kong recently, so I don't know what that one's about. But the first two, One Pride and Shudo, I think they're amazing partnerships. I really love those. The partnership with Lion Championship, it either feels a little bit too early for Lion Championship to be doing something like that, or unless WLF is sending younger fighters with less experience, I think that would make more sense. But it was cool to me for me to see Lion Championship getting some exposure outside of Vietnam, as they are rapidly growing to be a growing MMA organization in Southeast Asia. There's definitely, Southeast Asia, if you think about, like, this region is one of the areas that people don't really talk about as one that's really, really growing quickly. You've got a couple little promotions coming up in Indonesia, not to mention One Pride growing really quickly. You've got obviously One's doing a lot of things in Thailand. Lots of great gyms in Thailand as well. So yeah, and then Vietnam feels like they're inching their way onto the scene as well. So that's very cool. So yeah, we've got that partnership, which is cool. And then the other thing that I saw from last weekend that was really really cool. First of all, Rising 45, amazing event. Really loved it. I mean, Ryzen pretty much never misses. It feels like to me that there's always a lot of entertainment through and through the whole show. Really amazing show. Outside of Ryzen, the performance that I was really impressed by was the JCK main event, Buho Yoga and Shang Zhang is just like he's pretty much held a stranglehold over the regional Chinese scene for probably like the last 20 fights. I don't, gosh, when was the last time Zhang Zhifa lost on the regional scene? It's got to be like 7 8 years. As his last loss was the Contender Series loss, and before that, yeah, the last time he lost on the Chinese regional scene was August of 2016 against Hiyato Ishii. Gosh, the last time he lost to a Chinese fighter was 2014. Sorry, 2013. Unless that guy, okay, yeah, 2013 was the last time Shang Zhifa lost to another Chinese fighter. Since 2013, he's lost against two Russian guys. He's fought, golly, I bet he's fought 20 times. But Buho Yoga, I mean, he was a late replacement. Original opponent, Jumbo Chia, was injured. Buho Yoga, he's made some JCK finals before. He's probably in his like mid 30s, but when you're talking about the ethnic minority, he's like he's kind of the elder statesman of the MMA fighters of the minority. And I've always said, like, yeah, he doesn't have the best looking record, like 21 wins, 19 losses. But the guy, he's got a mean guillotine and he's got a really good right hand. And he put Shang Zhifa to sleep. And just a really cool, inspirational moment for this guy of this ethnic minority who's kind of the fighter that's most revered, most accomplished from that ethnic minority. Probably nearing the ish of his career and gets a big knockout and wins the belt. Seen some videos of him going back to his home village with the belt. Very cool stuff. That was definitely a big thing that I thought was really cool. Um, Another bit of news from this last weekend. Okay, I'm going to get into I just have one more thing before I get into the predictions, 2024 wish list, all of that stuff. But and I know I'm venturing outside of MMA a little bit for this, but to relate. I I only realized this today, but One Championship has an event in 8 days, an Amazon Prime event, and currently that event does not have a main event, and it only has 4 fights publicly announced. This is One Fight Night 18, January 15th, Bangkok. Main event was supposed to be Elias Mahmoudi fighting Superlek in a kickboxing fight. Sorry, um, one of the striking arts. They're supposed to fight each other in the main event. Elias Mahmoudi is injured, and so Superlek is without an opponent. So Amazon Prime has this show where in 8 days, I mean, they may have all this figured out already. They just haven't announced it yet. Why you wouldn't? Uh, but yeah, there's only 4 fights publicly announced. And other thing that makes all this far more interesting is 2 weeks later, you've got the Tokyo show, which there's rumors that Tang is out of his fight with Haru. I don't know what the truth is on that, but there's been the pictures floating around of him in a cast saying it's out. And the thing is that the other thing that I saw a day or two ago was the producer, one of the producers with who's won championships, broadcast partner in Japan, who's going to be broadcasting this event. Uh, he quote tweeted that Rod Tang bit of news and said like, "I haven't heard from one championship in 2 weeks. I've been trying to get a hold of him. They don't even know what's going on." Uh, which I think when a producer takes to Twitter and does something like that, it either means that they're desperate or really unprofessional. It feels a bit more like they're really desperate. So I don't know what's going on there. The newest rumor is that Superlek is going to step in and fight Rodman, which these guys they've been fighting. I know Superlek hasn't been over Rod Tang, so there's a little bit to sell there. And I mean, Superlek is a good fighter too, but I'm not quite sure how weight classes match up here. All this to say, one has a little bit of a cluster on their hands. So the fight with Elias Mahmoudi was scheduled for 135 pounds. The fight with Takeru and Rodtang is scheduled for also for 135 pounds. So the weight may not be an issue. They could do it. I did see it was Beyond Kick. I tried to find the post. It may have been deleted, but Beyond Kickboxing, a social media account, uh, posted that Superlek posted on his social media, see you in Japan. So that's implying that Superlek is going to be replacing Rod Tang on 165, which is like a good fight. It's obviously not why Takeru was brought into the organization, but it's like if you have to try and salvage a fight on short notice, there's that. It just begs the question of like, what is one championship going to do next week? And they have an Amazon Prime show. Don't know yet. They only have 4 fights announced, which those 4 fights are. Pull those up for you. Well, I actually have 5 fights. 1-1 Il versus Zoltateg, Zhang Li Peng versus Marisa Bebi, Ink Orgel Batar Ku versus Martin Balak, Oho Take versus Shabir Gasanov, and Mark Abelardo versus Ibrahim Awev, which are all 5 like decent fights. A couple ranked fighters, at least in 1 Hill, I believe is the only ranked fighter of that. But some decent fights. Obviously, like there's not really a main event in there. I mean, maybe Sabevi and Zhang Li Peng, but I don't know. My guess is that they are going to get 2 guys to fight weight for the main event, and then they're gonna the rest of the card would kind of look like some one Friday fights kind of stuff. But what I think is interesting is when one started the Amazon Prime deal, the first like thinking about like 2022 to early 2023, a lot of those events were pretty big events. They were all title fights, some of them multiple title fights. Thinking like they had like Angela Lee versus Zhong Jinnan, they had Demetrius Johnson versus Adriana Rice, 2 and 3. There was a lot of big fights, and those have just kind of like the quality of cards in terms of big names is definitely like dropped a lot. And I think it's gonna drop even more in 2024 because they're doing these member events where like they have these relationships with Alabama and a relationship with Qatar where they have to put on these like super huge events. And the problem is they just don't have the roster to put on amazing 12 amazing Amazon Prime shows, 46 Friday fights events, and what like 5 numbered shows that are on pay-per-view that are tentpole events, and they've just scaled far too big to where so many things are going to get stripped. And I mean, prove me wrong, one championship, but I just they don't have enough to go around. Like and you're seeing it next week with this card. Like, we're 8 days away from the card, and we don't even know what half of it looks like for the main event. You know, I know sometimes main events fall out. It was what, 5 days ago that Elias Manu publicly pulled out. And we don't know what this card's going to look like. Is it even still going to happen? We don't know. And then the other problem that they have is that they signed Takeru to like they signed Takeru because he's a great fighter, but they signed Takeru because they knew that they could put Takeru on pay per view against Tang and sell a ton of pay per views. Like, most of the money in the fight business is from pay per views and lucrative media rights deals. That's where most of the money is from. And they've got, I think their media rights deals are, from what I've heard, not that great. And so for them, like, they've got all this money from Qatar, and because Qatar is basically their lifeline right now, they have an obligation to basically make like UFC 300 in Qatar, and which they've basically said that they've said they're going to put 5 title fights on this Qatar show, and trying to invest in pay-per-view, which is a great idea if you are scaling back at other places. The problem is they already have these commitments to Loop in the Stadium, to Amazon Prime to put on all these shows, and these shows, I just feel like they're going to get stripped because they have these other relationships as well. UFC can put on UFC 200 in April because they can plan around it. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of Apex shows in the spring, and lowering the quality of these cards gives you more options to stack pay-per-views. They're also, you'll notice, I heard today that UFC is going to Rio de Janeiro, May 4th. That was from Laerte Viana reported that. You'll notice, like, a lot of times after these big cards or before a big card, like June pay-per-views, for example, they go international, so they can stack it with international fighters and like their biggest draws on the international fight weeks or the UFC tentpole events like that. So, but one championship just doesn't have that luxury. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. I mean, I'm guessing, like I said, S-weight main event from 2 guys but the thing is, here's the other thing, is when this happens, when you're scrambling to make a card at the last minute, there's injuries, you don't have options, that drives up costs because then fighters are asking for more money to step in and take fights on short notice on catch weights. So then the card becomes a lot more expensive. You have this budgeted allotted, and then you're way over budget because you're having to pay people for money. And I know that from the management side. I once tried to get a Chinese fighter to fill in on a one show on late notice, on 1 day's notice, literally. And the only way we were going to do it is if they were offering what, like 2,000 a year, like, we'll do it for 5,000. Because, like, yeah, it's literally today's notice. So, and that didn't end up happening, not because of the price, but travel logistics. But yeah, very interesting. A lot of interesting things going on with one right now. Check out my video, my newest video. I spent 34 minutes talking about that. But most likely what you're here for is questions and for the not awards, but the preview predictions wish list for 2024 Asian MMA. All right. Here we go, folks. Very, very little flash. You know, with me, you get a bare bones presentation. You get very basic, raw, very simple with me, which is kind of how I like it. But okay, just gonna go through some of my top things that I would love to see in 2024. I think all of these are realistic. I think they're all realistic. We'll see how many of these actually happen. Love to come back at the end of the year and see how many of these actually happen. All right. starting with UFC things. Hoping that Song Yadong and Shavkat Rakhmonov fight for UFC titles in the second half of this year. I think that'll happen. Song Yadong has to get past Peter Yan. Will he have to fight again after that? Probably. Seeing as though I would think if Rob Dvalishvili wins against Henry Cejudo, he will be a lock for the next shot. I think he should have been the next guy for the shot this time around, but old news. So probably unless Song is sitting around, bantamweight is a very stacked division. They're going to find someone for him to fight in the top 5 again after Peter Yan. So that one is I'm a little bit less sure about, but Shavkat Rakhmonov, I'm pretty sure he's going to fight for the title. He could just be Bilal Muhammad is next. We've heard that rumored for UFC 300, but after that, I think he could sit around and wait for a shot, or maybe the UFC will offer him like someone like Kamaru Usman. I doubt we'll see Colby Covington fight, but I would pick Shavkat Rakhmonov against Kamaru Usman. So that's my first prediction. Will Song? I don't even know who will be by that time. Will it be Merab? Will it be Sean O'Malley? Will it be Chito Vera? Who knows? But I do think that both of these fighters at some point in their UFC careers will be a champion. All right. Next prediction is that we think through Asian places in Asia UFC will visit. I think, and I have literally no insider knowledge on this, but I would say the UFC goes to Almaty, Kazakhstan in the summer, like they tried to do in 2020. They thought about it, considered it last year for August, and then it didn't work out. So maybe we'll get that this summer, and then Jakarta, I'm guessing we'll get that in the fall, September, October, and then Shanghai in December. I think with Shanghai, they really, really need to have full assurance that they can figure that out before the next time they try to go. So I think it'll take them. I don't think we're going to see like a quick turnaround. I don't know. Maybe it'll be great. Road to UFC opening round, but here's another thought. Maybe Road to UFC opening rounds. They have that in Kazakhstan. Kazakh fighters. How's that? And because of that, they have less fighters from Indonesia and India this year. I think that because of that, UFC has 2 developmental programs right now for Indonesian and Indian fighters. And one of them isn't technically the UFC's, but it's more or less what the UFC is using to develop Indian talent. That's the Cage Warriors Academy run by Graham Bolin in San Diego. A lot of the best Indonesian fighters have been coming in and out from there, fighting at Cage Warriors. That's doing its job. And then UFC is bringing 5 Indian fighters to the Shanghai PI this quarter. Sumit Kumar is one of them to train at the UFC PI. And at the end of that, qualify potentially for Road to UFC or for Contender Series. So I think probably because of that, we won't see many Indian fighters or Indonesian fighters. We might see a couple Indonesian fighters, but I honestly think it would be a good year to take a year off from that. Maybe just choose 1 or 2. Instead, let's do Kazakh fighters and East Asian fighters instead, and anyone else that stands out. I mean, there's other fighters outside of Asia that could make the cut. But there's your Road to UFC rounds as well. Summer, fall, December. My prediction for Asian events. All right, next one with UFC, and I know y'all gonna have some feelings about this, but this is partially my desire, but also partially my prediction, as in like whether I desired it or not. This is what I think will happen. I think Zhang fights Yan at UFC 300, and then Tatiana Suarez fights the belt in Shanghai. And I think the more I think about it, the more Zhang versus Yan for 300 sounds likely over a Zhang versus Grasso fight, because thinking about UFC 300, most likely a title fight in the main event, something like Bilal versus Leon Edwards in the co-main event. Maybe it depends on, it depends on if they're doing 3 or 4 title fights. If they're doing 3 title fights, then the thing is, the question is the UFC really going to put on a super fight, a champ versus champ super fight, where it's probably the number 1 and number 2 female fighters fighting each other? Are they really gonna have that, like, in the middle of a pay-per-view card? They could. I mean, UFC 300, they could, but I just feel like a champ versus champ fight does not belong in the middle of a pay-per-view, especially one this big. I mean, it is for, like, who's the best team on the planet, and I feel like it deserves a bigger billing than that. I feel like that should be a pay-per-view main event. So, hey, maybe they just wait until June, or maybe they have another time frame for John versus Grasso. The other thing is that it seems like everything has been pushing towards Grasso versus Shevchenko. If they do this, then they're giving up the Grasso versus Shevchenko fight. And if Zhang were to beat Grasso for the flyweight belt, then they've lost that fight, or it could never happen just because Shevchenko is getting older. So I feel like, from trying to think from that logic, it just makes more sense for them to do Zhang versus Yan. But I do think that will probably happen at 300, especially if we're going to Brazil in May, and there'd be no point of having that fight in Brazil, and all the pay-per-views before that. So the timing seems to work out that Zhang will defend or fight for a belt at UFC 300. And then hopefully, Tatiana Suarez, I feel like, is going to be like the biggest favorite of the whole year against the Mongol Most. And for the record, I heavily favor Zhang to beat Yan and Suarez to beat Moshe. They should fight later down the year. So that's my prediction for how that shakes out. Next one, Zhang Yang becomes a breakout star at light heavyweight. I really don't know how good this guy is, but George Tokos, who he beat in Road to UFC, was a pretty big prospect. And I think he was a pretty huge favorite against Zhang. And it was a knockout. Zhang, like a world in that fight, mind you. But I don't know how much better he's gotten since then. But this is more of a wish list than a prediction. So know the distinction. Wish list is something that in my heart I want. Prediction is more in my brain. So I think it would be really cool to have a Chinese fighter in heavier weight classes that can become a really big star. I think that would be awesome. So I'd love to see that kind of a Yao thing. All right, let's talk about some Korean stuff. Kim Woo puts his feet under him and cements himself as the top Korean prospect. So Kim has been announced to fight Yusu Young. That fight, I think, is confirmed by Black Combat. They're fighting Black Combat 10 January 20th for the Black Combat bantamweight belt. And Kim Min-woo, I felt like he's one of those guys that has an astronomical amount of potential, but just hasn't been able to capitalize a lot of times because of weight cutting. And hopefully he can make this cut to bantamweight. But I do think if he figures things out, then he could be really big. If he gets picked up by someone like the UFC, I think he could be successful and be really big as well. I think he's got a couple just intangible factors that I think could help him to some stardom. So that's both a prediction and a wish. Would love to see that guy succeed. Another one, speaking of Black Combat, they have a live streaming broadcast. I know that messes with their whole format of the documentary style released later, but let's be honest, like there's only so far you can go. There's so much popularity you can have sticking to that format, and they co-promoted, or they're going to co-promote again this year with WLF. And I mean, you got to have some kind of live stream broadcast. Man, I'm not that optimistic about this because WLF is they have great fighters, but they are kind of one of those organizations that doesn't really communicate that well about who's fighting or what doesn't communicate very well about what the fights are on the card. I still don't know what the prelim results are for their show back in October. And I've asked around. I've asked around people from WLF and the UFC, and I haven't gotten this yet. So I don't know what this show's going to entail whenever that happens, but expect not very good communication and maybe difficulty streaming it. Unfortunately, the bar that I'm used to. But man, I would love it if Black Combat would have a live streaming broadcast. All right. For JCK, I would love to see. I think what I'm seeing from JCK is they are a promotion that is poised to give China everything that's always needed in terms of a big, really well-run a Chinese organization that can raise up people from the bottom all the way to the top and beyond. What I've seen from them and how I've interacted with them, even recently, I've talked about Matrix Fight Night, how impressed I am with them. I'm also impressed with JCK. There's still some things for them to figure out, but I think that they're one of the best organizations in all of Asia, especially for their age, one of the best in the whole world. I would love to see from them, what I feel like is the next step for them is to host 1 to 2 shows a month on the road and build more of a live audience feel and a live brand to their shows. And they had a show in a small village in South China in November. I would love to see more of that, have live audiences, be able to even market fighters from specific provinces, have local fighters, and just build up a bigger following. I would love to see that. I feel like that's what Chinese MMA needs next. They've got the UFC PI now. They've got 2 solid organizations in WLF and JCK. They're creating more and more stars. Good gyms. Now they need a live audience, a live experience, and that's going to create a lot more MMA fans. And I hope that they figure things out with the UFC Fight Pass. I did hear, what was the last I heard about that? Someone from the organization reached out to me, and maybe like 3 weeks ago, and was like, "Hey, can you check and see what the last event was on Fight Pass?" And it was their championship event in July. And they're like, "Okay, thanks for letting us know." They're like, "We know it hasn't been broadcasting for a while, but so I don't know what they'll do there, but hopefully some kind of broadcast for people outside. Anyone can technically watch the streams. You do have to go to a Chinese website or Chinese social media. Anyone can technically do it, but there's probably like 100 people in all of the US that do that. So hopefully they can figure out something with that. Okay. Seika Izawa fought last Saturday and had a dominant win over Miyu Yamamoto, submitted her in the second round by rear naked choke. Sent her off into retirement. Seika Izawa, I feel like she has overgrown Ryzen. And I say that respectfully, and Ryzen has done a phenomenal job with her. And she's fought for some other Japanese promotions too, but I feel like Seika Izawa has outgrown. Honestly, Japan is ready for bigger things, bigger challenges. So I think maybe Seika Zawa gets to a point where she signs with the UFC. I don't know how much longer Ryzen can keep giving her opponents. How much longer there is of that, who knows? Maybe some women from one championship could find their way to Ryzen. Who knows? Gosh, could you imagine like a Seika Zawa versus like Ham So-hee or even a Tex? Those amazing matchups, would they not? But yeah, Seika Zawa needs to. She's outgrown her pool. She's a big fish in little ponds. I'm guessing she's gonna venture outside of Ryzen, or Ryzen's gonna bring in a lot of cards. All right, this is something for Indian MMA. My big hope for Indian MMA. I was trying to think through what's like the biggest fight that can be made right now in Indian MMA, and I don't know what the biggest would be. I mean, Matrix Fight Night could have some fights with, I think, with Azul Azim Badakshi, pretty big. But I think the fight that gets me the most excited about right now would be an MFN flyweight title between champion Angad Bish and Clinton DeCruz. DeCruz is one of those Indian prospects. And I'm hearing some people, even outside the people that frequently cover Indian MMA, which is a lot, but some folks are starting to notice this guy, Clinton DeCruz, really good grappler, a pretty good jab cross combination. I think he will probably fight for the flyweight title next against Angad Bish, who I think is one of the top fighters in India as well. Real strong, stocky flyweight, pretty good wrestling and grappling. I think that's probably the fight to make next. And honestly, if that's also one of the highest quality fights that I think can happen in India, especially between two Indian fighters. Both of these fighters have a really big future. I know Angad Bish is managed by Iridium, so he's got that connection already. But that would be a great fight if we could see that. Speaking of Matrix Fight Night, adding an international broadcast. They were supposed to have some news about that for their last show, but never came to fruition. So, I mean, they used to just stream on YouTube. So, if anything, hopefully they can get that figured out. Do that again. Would love to be able to watch those shows. Which their next show I've heard will be in April, maybe. Kind of far away, sooner. Anyways, in Kazakh MMA, this would be cool. A Niza versus Octagon co-promoted show. This is probably not going to happen, but I love it. This is more of a wish list thing. That was great. Niza and Octagon, two phenomenal promotions. Lots of incredible fighters. That would be an amazing show. Anything else? Okay. This is neither. I would need to put this in the prediction category nor the wish list category. But this is something that I could see happening if we get to that point. I think so. Okay. So Chalktree said that by I don't know, second half of this year, that one championship should be profitable. Well, maybe what he's thinking of is that they're going to sell a bunch of their assets and finally turn a profit. So what if, and I think this is what one should do. I think that one championship should sell their MMA divisions to PFL. PFL can get their foot in the door with building a league in Asia, even though a lot of one's fighters are not necessarily Asian fighters on their MMA side. They've got a lot of Europeans and some Americans as well. But either way, they those fighters also have a home in Europe, all the other things. But they could use it to build out their international series. And for one, they're able to make a lot of money with it. They're not able to put these fighters in active rotation in quality fights often enough. So this is a way that they can honor those fighters to give them a place to fight while also allowing themselves to focus on the best parts of their brand, which is Muay Thai boxing, and really let that shine. And everyone seems to win from this arrangement. I don't know if it'll happen. I mean, if one's going out of business, it's either going to be something like that or which that's the other thing would be like, does PFL have another investment at the ready to be able to do that? That's a lot of cash that you're moving through, and I don't know if that would even, but that would be interesting. That's the last one. All right. So thanks for watching. That was my preview and predictions for 2024, and see how many of those come through at the end of the year. All right, hopping on your questions. Yeah. What do you think of Shinryu versus Horiguchi from Ryzen? I thought it was a banger. Did you think Shinryu was really good to go? I did. I mean, I still think that Makoto is a really good fighter. Horiguchi just got the better of things. I think also Horiguchi is someone who's typically probably underrated. I think he's one of the best fighters in the lower weight classes, like top 5 probably in the lower weight classes. So yeah, I think you think he'll get there and he'll keep, but it's just like Horiguchi is just, it's levels, levels to the game. Sour note, been watching On Point, Week's MMA picks, James Lynch. They all have a hot take that runs through Whaley. To watch that MMA On Point. I think that what does she have to do to earn respect? Beat Suarez. I think that the 2 Rose losses really set a lot of people back off on Whaley. Even though the second one was really close, I think just the optics. I think Rose is a really well-loved MMA fighter, and I think that Tatiana Suarez is also a really well-loved fighter. But if I'm predicting that fight, I think I still side with Whaley on that fight. But I don't think it would be. Man, I don't think it'd be easy. I mean, I can see. It's not like there's no path to victory. There are ways that you can see Suarez winning that fight. I don't think that they're going to have to, but I don't know. At the same time, it's like you have to sometimes you just have to let go and be like, people are entitled to their opinion. They're allowed to have their opinion and their picks. It's hard. I think it's also really hard when there is a fighter in MMA and it's 5 times as much in the women's divisions. When there is a fighter in MMA who is a really strong, powerful wrestler that has a lights out rate of getting people down to the ground. I mean, just think about the Dagestani fighters. Those fighters rarely get picked against. Very rarely get picked against. And so Suarez just totally fits that mold. And there's not many fighters like her in the women's divisions. And I think because of that, people have a really hard time picking against her because she is such a dominant wrestler and grappler. I think just because of that, if John beats her, then she will get the respect that she's deserved. I don't know what else you have to do. Kunlun they never technically left. They kind of pivoted to be mostly a kickboxing promotion. and I think it had been a long time since they had promoted any MMA, but just in their last couple shows, they've put on, like, 1 MMA fight. I think that probably on this show in Bangkok, this will be the only MMA fight or maybe 2. They have had, um, their last show at the end of the year, they were supposed to have 2 fights, but one of them got canceled. The one that they had, though, was a pretty solid fight. Um, it was 2 guys that had been around for a while, so, um but yeah, I don't know if they're ever gonna do anything more than that. Yeah, I did say Wu Yanan versus Wang Song. It's a mismatch. That's a mismatch I've seen from Wang's kickboxing career, and she's considered one of 3 queens of combat sports in China. Wang Song is probably the other 2. Why do they wanna get Wu well, Wu Yanan I mean, who's the best fighter for Wang Song to fight outside of the UFC? Especially in Asia, like, who if you're not going to one championship, who's the best woman to fight? It is you guys have to realize how hard it is for women to find fights, especially in Asia, like high quality opponents. It is so hard. I when Road to UFC was considering doing a women's division this year or last year, I I was managing at the time, and we were actually trying to recruit women for Road to UFC. We were trying to sign fighters to our management organization for the Road to UFC, and we just couldn't find excuse me. There was a couple that we had talked to, but things didn't work out, because they were signed with someone else. There was so few options. And honestly, getting someone who's fought in the UFC is the best I think the best that you can do. So, I'm not mad about the record too, 3-0 versus whatever Wu Yanan is, around 20 fights. I'm not mad at this fight at all. Kyoji Horiguchi of Standing Stanley listening to Jack Slack's Patreon. He said UFC should have a division, but probably won't because when Watterson was in her prime, they didn't, and Izawa, while skilled, isn't as charismatic. Even if they probably should atom weight for her. Yeah, for an atom weight division to happen in the UFC, I think what I think what is lacking is for there to be not even like a Ronda Rousey of atom weight, but there there needs to be someone that they can kind of build the division around. It would be great if you can have 3 fighters that you can build the division around. I think that UFC could open an atomweight division. It would be small. I think even in like 3 years, it would be about the size of the UFC's weight division for women. And even that division has kind of struggled off and on to stay in people's attention since Rousey left. So I think once the UFC, if there's like a really awesome woman, even like kind of a, I don't know, a Kayla Harrison of the Atom, something like that, someone who's getting some attention, I think that they could do it. Um, but yeah, I'm always like right on with that because you don't want to start the vision and realize that it was a mistake. So, um, and I think it's easier for the UFC to add the heavier weight classes than the smaller weight classes. The heavier ones are just a little bit more marketable, unless you've got a super charismatic star like that. Yeah. Adding what I said earlier, no one is destined for the belt, but you still have to go up there and win. Isn't that phrase destined to be a champion? Well, uh, true, but you also have to realize a lot of fighters get title shots in the UFC without fully going through the kind of pathway that like a Bilal Muhammad or a Leon Edwards or a Tony Ferguson had to go through. They were just fighting contender after contender. there are fighters that have very short paths to the belt. I mean, look at Alex Tejeda, look at Brock Lesnar. Fighters that just have this it factor, this realm of dominance that shot them up the ranks way faster. I think we could see something like that with Sharputin Magomedov too. I mean, they debuted him against the guy just outside the top 15, and I've heard a rumor that could be the main event of the Saudi Arabia show. So there are fighters that I think if they are super dominant and popular to go along with it, they get some extra privileges. Like it or not, this is the way the sport has always been run, and it's the way it's going to continue to be run. At least I have less reservations. So there were some people saying that Suarez, after she beat, after like there are some people now saying that either Suarez or Jan should get the shot at the belt. I've never felt that way. I felt like beating Jessica Andrade was really impressive, but that it was still that the division was big enough and there were plenty of contenders out there to where Suarez still needed to fight someone in the top five. And she's not even getting to do that and fighting Amanda Lemos. That could have just been a scheduling kind of thing. But yeah, I wish they could have made a different matchup because you know that if she beats Lemos, then everyone's going to be like, she's going to be in line for a title. I just wish that she could fight someone who is a lot more athletic and has like a really good game. But that was the fight that was made. So yeah. I bookmarked your one overview of the movie. I'm trying to find time to watch it. It's very, I know. I did it deep. I wanted to make a longer one. Most of my videos are 10 to 15, sometimes 20 minutes long. This one I wanted to feel a little bit more like something I had put some more research into, mini documentary. But yeah, how long did it take you to make that? So it took I had the idea probably since October. Originally, the idea was to focus on the women's divisions, seeing as though there was the drama with Ritu Phogat, there's the drama with Kim So Yul, and Angela Lee was leaving, and I was like, are these women's divisions dying? Xiong Jingnan has no one to fight. So I was developing a video off of that. I was running through the stats, trying to see like what Friday Fights had given us anybody for either of those women's fights, Stamp or Shaw. Hadn't, but then I was just asking the bigger question of like, is this just happening all across MMA? Because all those MMA divisions kind of got frozen in 2023. Then I felt like to focus on the women's divisions instead of broadening the scope to all MMA would be kind of pointless to not just look at the broader set of data. If that same trend was happening through and through, and maybe there'd be a lot of new insights, and the scope of the video bigger, hopefully get more attention. So I started thinking about it probably September or October, and just writing down thoughts as I would get them. And then in December, I really went into full mode for that. In the month, I was kind of focused on UFC stuff. All right, a lot of those videos didn't get made because they didn't go to Shanghai Road UFC. It didn't happen in that time frame. But yes, so then as soon as December 9th had passed, the Song Yadong fight had passed, I was devoting pretty much all of my time to that and scripting it, researching it. I really wanted the data to hold up. I wanted the research to hold up. I didn't want there to be gaping holes in the argument, which someone may point out problems with the arguments and the data that I presented. But my sister is a data scientist. She has a PhD in political science and is like a brainiac and really, really good with data. She's actually even approached me sometimes like, hey, like if you ever have like a huge data project where you need to, it's like bigger than your scope and just where I can have some like online models of data for MMA, like you know, just for me to be able to practice some things. So I thought of her when I was making that video, like this needs to really like hold up to her scrutiny. So I was trying to think about it from different angles, different disclaimers, and different angles you could have on that. So I think that took longer, and then just scripting it out felt a lot like writing a paper for college. You know, a beastly paper for college. If I suppose my script is, I don't know how many pages, probably 10 pages long. But I think I wanted something to. I put out a lot of like opinions, things like that, break news, but I also wanted something a little bit more on the journalistic side that's a little bit more research oriented. That because those kind of things, you see a lot of opinions out there on YouTube, but you don't see a lot of, and beyond YouTube too, you see a lot of opinions takes, but you don't see as much like respectable research. And I'm an amateur at research. That did a lot of research in college for my degree, but yeah. But I was like, I want something that is respectable, that hopefully can be kind of picked up and looked at by some people outside of my typical audience. And the video's done really well so far. I'm shocked at how many people have watched it for it being a 34-minute video. So happy about that, and hopefully it still has a lot of life in it. It was hard because there was literally news being announced by one championship about fights while I was making the video, even up to like last week when I was filming it, and a couple things I had to like film or like just because it was like, okay, this whole like roster evaluation. Well, now this fight has been announced for Japan, so I have to. So that was a challenge as well, but yeah. And then with the video, I was like, I want all this to literally be my best efforts. If I get a bad take, I want to do another take, and really want this to, as hard as I can. I mean, I can be a very monotone, boring person, especially when talking about data. And there are very few people, I think, that want to just hear me turn on a camera and talk about data. So it was a challenge also for me to try my hardest, and I don't know if I always succeeded, but to try to present research and data and arguments in a way that keeps people's attention while not watering down the product. So definitely not like, there's definitely a lot of room to grow, but it felt like the best that I could give at the end of December 2023. Appreciate your support. So you said Beyond Kickboxing. Is Beyond Kickboxing a good source of information? Who runs that account? I think the guy that runs it is Tim. What's his name? Scottish guy, Tim Wheaton. Oh, no. Okay, take that back. He does not. I don't think he runs the website. He writes for Beyond Kickboxing. We followed each other a long time ago. So I don't know. I literally only, I was searching through Twitter trying to find the latest on all that stuff, Superlek, Rod Tang, and I saw that the only reason I mentioned it was because all I cited was that Superlek posted that on social media. I tried to find that post on Twitter and on Instagram, and I couldn't find it. I don't know if it was on Facebook or if it got deleted, but they were. I've mentioned that was because they posted it, but I can't speak to them. Yeah, I've seen James just go off on these people for champion predictions since I'm part of the group that argues on Reddit and YouTube about Weili. What do you think of my idea for Weili? Beats Xiaonan, Suarez, and Grasso in the next 2 years. Do you think people will finally? rating. I think people will respect her if she beats. I think she'll gain some respect just by beating another foe if she beats Jan. But I think to get the most respect you can get is beating someone that beat you in a rematch. Also, is beating someone who is stylistically your toughest fight. So if all of us were to sit around and think of stylistically what is the toughest fight for Wei Li, honestly, I would say someone like Joanna or someone like Suarez. Those are the two people I would think of, and she's already beaten Joanna twice. So, well, obviously Rose is a tough matchup for her. We know that. But so Rose, Joanna, and Suarez. If the Rose fight were to happen again, and John were to win, I think that she would get a lot of respect back as well. But this is the burden of being a champion. Right? The burden of being a champion is that there are always detractors. There are people that either have an axe to grind, or they dislike other fighters better, or they, for whatever reason, just aren't totally convinced. I mean, on the flip side, if there was a situation where Jung had no viable challenges anywhere, then things would get really boring, right? So, in defense of there being some back and forth, some dissension, I think that actually makes the sport a lot more exciting. Makes matchups a lot more exciting. If Jung ever gets to the point where she's fighting fighters that are ranked number 10, and if it ever gets to the Demetrius Johnson or even the Valentina Shevchenko kind of thing for a while, then things wouldn't be very fun. So it's a way to right now, and I appreciate that. So one thing on my wish list, Wei Li fights whoever at Singapore again. So she has to fly, only needs to fly 1 hour from Bang Tao. Her opponent needs to fly 26 hours to Singapore. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. MMA question. Did you know that Kid Yamamoto's older sister is Miyu Yamamoto? I only found this out this week. How will Miyu be remembered in MMA same as Kid? I don't think same as Kid. So yeah, I did know that. I actually knew of Kid Yamamoto way before I knew who Miyu Yamamoto was. And I was like, oh wow, she's his older sister. You know, Yamamoto had a lot of swag, but I don't think that she had quite the aura of Kid Yamamoto. She didn't. I mean, Kid Yamamoto had some really good knockouts, and I don't think Miyu Yamamoto really had a lot of those like signature wins. And also, there's the difference between like kind of the JMMA of the past, more of like Pride, Dream, Sengoku era, and JMMA nowadays just isn't. It has a lot of magic to it, and Ryzen's doing everything they can to capture that, but I don't think it has quite the same. And I think Miyu just doesn't have the. Actually, how popular is she? What's her following? So she's got 40K Instagram followers, which might be hard pressed to find many with more than that. Rena Kubota has 148K. I know these numbers don't tell the story, but okay, so she's pretty popular. I think why she is so respected is because honestly because of her age, what she has showed out for in her older age, the swag that she has even in her older age. I think that's why she is so respected. Uh, so to make matters worse, Suarez on her. Oh, I didn't see that. To look into that, but I didn't hear about making stuff. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't foresee it. I mean, Suarez seems like a pretty respectful person. I feel like she's someone. Hopefully, I don't know. That would suck. John Grosso's the fight to make. Suarez gonna lose. There's a hot take. Interesting. I mean, I guarantee you, Limoges is probably doing some wrestling training. That's for sure. A popular opinion, but I hope that way versus Grosso happens and holds up both divisions, since both divisions have entitled fighters. Well, they have there are several contenders. There's both of those divisions have one or two fighters that are in one or two spot. So it's not like there are contenders that keep them playing the current. Yeah, I mean that's challengers downplaying the champ. That's going to happen in almost every division. And that's the sport. But yeah, entitled to your opinion. With one rapidly fading, I wish it were easier to follow the other orgs. Yeah, I don't know which ones you're talking about, but if you're talking about Asian promotions, that has been a big downside of a lot of Asian promotions is that a lot of them are geo blocked, like a lot of the best ones. India, geo blocked, only available to watch fight night within India. Japan often has been geo blocked. I think they are mostly available internationally. I know like Pancrase and uh, Shudo are now on like YouTube via subscription model, so that's good. China is like you can technically watch all their stuff for free, even outside of China, but you got to know you have to have the web link. So yeah, you know, I feel like it's something I should do, even if even if it's like every weekend. But I'll try to just like for like WLF and ACK shows, even if you already know where to go, just like yeah, I'll try to tweet out the broadcast links to those more often. Because yeah, you don't even need a login or anything to watch. So comparison, I think you'll agree with Whaley is currently the Charles Oliveira in terms of being an undefeated. It's pretty fair. I think uh, with Charles Oliveira, when you have losses, I guess different losses are handled differently and aged differently. With Charles Oliveira, I think even like for me, I had a lot of respect for the longevity of his UFC career and how many times he like resurrected it over and over and over. And by the time he finally got to the championship level and even won the belt, I was like, this doesn't even feel real because Oliveira has been around so much. And honestly, a lot of fighters have beaten him. And so there's very little aura of invincibility around him. We know that he can get knocked out, he can lose a decision. And so it was hard for me um, to really accept like this idea that Oliveira could be champion and defend his belt over and over and over again. And it also speaks to the quality of divisions too. You have 115 where you've got Suarez, Yunus. Typically, historically, 115 has been a pretty good division. It's not as good as it used to be. There's a couple good contenders right now, but it's not as deep as it used to be. And 155 has always been a really deep division. So I think when there's someone who has a couple of losses on their record, you lose that aura of invincibility, and they're already in a really stacked division, it is really hard to visualize them as a dominant champ for a long time, unless you are just you're really, really sold on that fighter, and either because you're a fan or you have an argument for them to be able to use their skills to beat anyone else in the division, which you may. I know a lot of folks on this channel feel that way, but I think there's also the thing in MMA where it's like on any given night if they make the wrong move. So I personally would pick Zhang against anyone in the strawweight division, but do I feel like she could never lose? I don't. She's lost before. It's hard for me to like fully see that, but I think if I'm seeing your comparison between the two, that's how I feel. And the reality is, it's like everyone loses fights. It's just different losses age differently or responded to differently. Interesting comparison for sure. I haven't watched my video about one yet, but I do really hope they stick around, even if they are a 4-ounce promotion, pretending to be an MMA promotion. Fights are always good, even though I don't like the people who show for it or the people involved in that promotion. But I want to see fighters succeed. Exactly. I feel the same way. I do. I think I'm just like, guys, just cut the BS. Just wrap your identity totally around Muay Thai. Make yourself known for being this just like nonstop roller coaster, action-packed excitement organization that is just that gives you something that you can't see anywhere else. Not that there's no Muay Thai. Which did you guys see Cage Fury, which is a U.S. promotion in the United States Northeast? They announced today that they're starting a Muay Thai league. They already have a grappling division, which has been really successful, at least from what I can tell. They put on great events. Didn't they have like, I mean, they always stack it with like UFC fighters competing in grappling. Arizona UFC Fight Pass, Fury Pro Grappling. I'm guessing Fury Muay Thai or Cage, whatever they call it, will be similar, but they did the right thing of separating the sports. I really like that. And I wish that one either separate them or focus totally on striking and be king of the world in that area. That's what I would love to see. And then I feel like they could, sky's the limit, you know, once they do that. So the thing, you've seen me argue with people on the channel before. There's some people who are standing on most people. Well, that's their opinion. I mean, I can't vouch for people's motives, but people are entitled to their opinions in MMA, and they're gonna like who they like and not like who they don't like. So, yeah. Can I say not? Oh, absolutely. Non-related. What combat sport besides MMA do you enjoy on the side? I don't watch any other combat sports. However, if I do, the few times I do, if I did, it would be grappling. And I think mostly because that is the martial art that I've had the most practice in. So I, just because of that, gravitate towards it. I think that there are some really cool grappling organizations. I think if like promoted well and showcased well, grappling can be really cool. I love the open mat look to things where there's literally no obstacles. I love the small crowds that are in little like theaters or just love the like small crowds of 500 people or 1,000 people who watch quietly. It's a different vibe, and I really like that a lot. And I need to go back and watch. I actually need to go back and watch some of the last Fury Pro event because Fatima Klein was on that event, and it's like a random thing for me to kind of have like a kind of connection. But back in the early days when I was starting off social media with MMA ecosystem and trying to get interviews, Fatima Klein was the first person I ever interviewed, and she was she the first person or the second? She may have been the first person I interviewed her over text, and then I interviewed her live as well. And I think because of that she gave that kind of attention to me as like a teeny tiny little channel. I feel really like I'm going to go out of my way to you, even though you don't fall into my niche whatsoever. So, but yeah, I need to go back and watch that. Yeah, I think grappling is cool. Grappling is a cool. Always present good information and rarely have a hot take. You need to do better at that, actually. Everything is well researched. That's why I boycott without disrespect. It's hard. Hey, yeah, should never disrespect people's hard work, even if you don't like them, and even if you are against what they stand for, you have to appreciate. How do I rank Ryzen 45 to last year's show? I think as far as a show itself, last year squeaks ahead because they played the Pride theme. Fights this year delivered with the finishes upsets. It looks like another question after that. I liked the show a little bit better. I felt like it was, more action packed. Some really great. I mean, the Mikyu Ueda upset over Tsuyoshi Sudario, Ai Asakura over Ueda. Really big upsets, really surprising. I love this year's show for sure. I hope one stays too, even if they just go all in on Muay Thai. KSW and even Octagon are showing better MMA than one. It's true. Even as they refuse to book their good fighters, LOL. It's true. Octagon, you guys, like Europe and especially kind of like Eastern Europe is like the next, like, or not next, or it's like can't even express to me, and it's happening all under my nose because I don't always pay a lot of attention to it. But it is such it's probably the market around the world in MMA that is booming the most. They are consistently putting on sold out like stadium shows with tens of thousands of people, which has only happened in the last couple years. And they're putting up good fighters, and I think the highest level of production. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of organizations coming looking at them as kind of the blueprint of how to do things. Because Octagon, KSW, I think that for the longest time it was Cage Warriors was really the gold standard of European MMA. And there's others like ACA has always had good fighters, ECP or whatever. But Cage Warriors kind of thing. But Cage Warriors, they're still an amazing promotion, but it seems like now they're kind of sharing. They're not going to be able to dominate the market as much as they used to. You've got EFL Europe. You've got which has some pretty big British and European stars, real stars, and then you've got Octagon and KSW also vying for their piece of the pie. So, it's no longer Cage Warriors at the top of the group. By far not putting on the biggest shows, that's for sure. KSW and Octagon are putting on some of the biggest shows of all time. So impressive. So impressive. Let's see. Dana said he's going to release the whole main card on his Instagram Live. I hope Whaley versus Grosso is one of them. Won't be until Tuesday of next week. Oh, I didn't hear that. Did not hear that. Well, I'll look that up later. I have to do better at that. People say something and then I immediately pull out my phone and I did not do that. Won't be until Tuesday. So interesting. Okay. Well, I'll have to pay attention to that. Do you think Sung Jin Nan can come into the UFC, or do you think she's staying in one championship for her whole career? Man, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. She seems like a fighter who is at the end of her career by the way that she's fighting and by what she's saying, and just her age. She's like 35, 36. I don't know what she is, just such a weird position. No one for her to fight. I mean, honestly, if I'm one championship, and I know people can complain about champ versus champ fights, but honestly, like, especially if you're going out of business, make Stamp versus Shang Jing Nan at strawweight. I think that's the only fight to make. It's the biggest fight you can do for sure. Um, maybe the UFC would give her an opportunity if one were to fold or she were to leave this year. But yeah, it's tough just because she is at the end of her career, and I don't know that she offers a ton of value to the UFC. I don't, I know that sounds mean, but I only say that just because just because of her current career trajectory. I know she's on a win streak. She's been winning, but I think it'd be different if she just presented herself as someone that is like going to try to knock everyone out. She's committed to this game for a long time. It feels like there's not a lot of energy on her side. Um, and maybe that's because of her circumstances. Maybe it's not totally her fault, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the time would have to be right now for them to do that. But yeah, I mean, you can bring her in. I mean, they brought in Michael Chandler, and it worked out for him. It hasn't always worked out for other fighters, but a lot of fighters that come to the UFC promotions, even later in career teams, have success. So it could happen. Put her up against someone at the bottom of the top 15 and see how that goes. I think that could be interesting. What do I thinking about Whaley versus Grosso? Um, yeah, I've touched on this a little bit. Overall, it's not the fight that I want to see next, just because I've I feel like that should not. I kind of touched on this earlier on the podcast about why I would prefer it to happen at UFC 300, but I would favor Jong in that fight, although going up a weight class would make her more scary. Well, honestly though, Grosso only in the last couple of years moved up to flyweight from strawweight as well. And Jong is a pretty big strawweight, so I actually don't think that there would be that much of a size difference. I think that's a pretty competitive fight. I think on the feet, that is a pretty competitive fight. I think in the clinch, Jong mauls Grosso. She's gotten a little bit better, but for a long time in her career, Grosso did not really respond well to pressure, and Jong is really good at pressure. So I think that's what would make the difference for me. But Jong, better wrestler, better striker. That's hard for me to say. Probably Jong, but Grosso is pretty good too. So I mean, it's a great fight. Any way you slice it, everyone agrees that's a great fight. Really entertaining. Does a lot for both women's careers if they would love to see it. I would love to see it next year. maybe yeah, maybe the year there'll be some fresh contenders that I'm hiding for. But my personal preference is for champs to stay in their weight classes and defend top contenders. That's just the way I'm built. Yeah. And then probably last question for today. What do you think? Do you think Whaley versus Sean can happen at UFC versus one do champ versus champs? See, you know, I think if I were to take your question further, I would say I would wonder if one were to fold and UFC to buy or pick up a lot of their best fighters, including Sean, would they give her an immediate? I don't think they would. I don't think that one championship has established themselves as an organization that immediately merits that. You think about previous organizations that have gone away in the past, fighters that got immediate title shots. What comes to mind is mostly from Pride. Rampage got an immediate title shot against Chuck Liddell, and then Dan Henderson got an immediate title shot against Anderson Silva. But the positioning was a little bit different. Pride, I think, was widely regarded as a pretty equal competitor. There were times when people said Pride was the overall better organization. So I think things are a little bit different. I don't think, like, for Bellator and for PFL, if both of them were to fold and their fighters released and signed by UFC tomorrow, I don't know that there's a fighter in any of those organizations that would be picked up by the UFC. I mean, obviously, like a Chris Cyborg kind of thing, like, yeah, she would get a title shot if they added back 145. But yeah, I feel like the best fighter most likely to get an immediate title shot, should the UFC like buy one championship tomorrow, would be Anatoly Malikin. I think he's their like best and most intimidating fighter they have on roster. But I think they would maybe put Strong somewhere around like a number 10 ranking to see how good she is, and then like a Malikin, they probably I could see them doing top 10, maybe top 5 for him. Christian Lee, maybe a ranked opponent. But all right, let's see. One championship. Thinking about crazy if it closes. You know, they saying UFC should buy it. One thing that we all need to remember, I think it's important to acknowledge that so far there have been zero rumors or talk of one championship actually closing or selling, anything like that. That's the one thing that is missing from all of this, which there could be, but I have not heard, like, a year ago, there were talks of like that Bellator was on the market. So far, one championship has showed no interest. There's been no like journalistic rumors that like one championship is going to fold. The best that we've had in that direction would be the report from Christy Neo of Deal Street Asia, reporting that one's financial runway will expire in Q3 of this year. That does not mean that they are going to fold. That could be pending some additional investment. There could be some other factors, but it's just kind of like, yeah, as things stand right now, the money's going to run out. In the past, I think Chaudhry was asked, when was that? Maybe 2 years ago, Chaudhry was asked, like, would one championship ever consider selling? He said, absolutely not. I think that Chaudhry has too much pride for that. Are things different now? Maybe. And there's also public Chaudhry and then private Chaudhry. So I don't know if they would. I think at the very least they should sell MMA. And that way they can still exist as an organization while getting some good money for some of the assets. I think that's the wisest option. And I've talked at length about all different scenarios and options, but yeah, crazy. If one was on ESPN Plus, that'd be nice. Yeah, Amazon Prime is a good. I mean, for North Americans, Amazon Prime has been a very good streaming service to watch one on. I've really appreciated that. Hope that fight between Chinese fighters never happens because there's some respect. And then another comment saying it happened with Angela Lee and Sean. So Angela Lee, I don't actually know. I've seen Canadian flags next to her name, and I've also seen American flags next to her name, but her relative from Singapore. So I don't actually know, but that was actually not a China versus China fight. Yeah, they almost had one with Shaw versus Meng Wolf. It was a fight to make, but I don't know if it's something where Chinese fighters don't want to fight each other. No, that's a whole other thing. But anyways, hey guys, appreciate your participation, your comments. That was a lot of fun today. Enjoyed going through that wish list show. I will not be here next week. I am actually traveling for the next 10 days, going back home, celebrating the Christmas holiday later. Just decided to do that in January instead of December this time around. So I will not be here next week. The week after that, I will be here. And I have, oh man, I am like the kind of person that if I know something really exciting, it's really hard for me to keep a secret. And I will have something to share really soon about something in the very immediate future, an opportunity that I'm super pumped about. I'll tell you the full story soon, but there could be a like life-changing opportunity in the near future, like next couple months, or not next couple weeks, kind of thing. So I was, yeah, I'm working on some things. Hopefully, the next couple days, I will have some good news. Either way, I'll have at least something small to share. So I know that's like a terrible thing to say. Why would you say that? Super vague. But uh, yeah, there you go. See you in 2 weeks and enjoy the week off from MMA. We'll see you next time.